Hey, welcome back. We're diving right back into the incredible journey of water. In part 2 of Rain and Rivers, we're literally going to follow a single raindrop all the way from the sky down to the sea. You ready? Let's go. So, have you ever been caught in a downpour and just thought, wow, how much water is actually falling right now? Or maybe you've seen a huge, powerful river and wondered, how in the world did this all start from just water falling from the sky? Well, those are exactly the kinds of questions we're digging in today.
All right, our raindrop has a pretty epic journey ahead, and we're going to follow it through 5 main stages. We'll start by figuring out how to measure rain. Then we'll see how river actually gets started. After that, we'll look at how rivers literally shape the world, tackle the tough stuff like floods and cyclones, and finally, wrap up with how we can all stay safe and prepared. Let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. How do we even begin to count the rain? I mean, it sounds kind of impossible, right? But scientists have a really simple, super clever tool for the job. And that tool is called a rain gauge. This is the official instrument scientists use. And it's basically a special container that catches rain. All you do is measure how high the water gets, usually in centimeters. It's a surprisingly simple but really powerful way to compare rainfall. So we can say for sure if one town got way more rain than another during a big storm. And here's the cool part. You can totally make one of these yourself. It's easy. Just grab a plastic bottle, slice the top off, and flip it upside down to make a funnel. You can add a little sand and water at the bottom to make it stable and give yourself a clear zero line to start from. Now the most important part, and I mean this is crucial, you have to place it out in a wide open area. Why? Because if it's under a tree or next to a building, you won't get an accurate reading. After the next rainfall, just grab a ruler and measure the water you collected. See? Simple. Okay, so the rain is fallen, and we've measured it in our homemade gauge. But what happens next? How does that little bit of water begin its massive journey to become a river?
Well, once rain hits the ground, it really has 3 choices. Some of it soaks right into the soil. That's a process called percolation. Some of it just evaporates, turning back into water vapor and heading back up into the air. But it's the rest of it, the water that stays on the surface, that's where our story really gets going. It starts to flow, and that's how we get the very first trickles of a stream.
And you know where this journey almost always kicks off? High up on a mountain or a big hill. See, gravity is the boss here. It pulls all that rainwater downhill. And as it flows, it starts carving out these tiny little channels in the dirt. Every time it rains again, those channels get a little deeper, a little wider, and eventually they become the permanent path for what will one day be a river. Now, a river doesn't just get big all by itself. Nope, it gets a lot of help from its friends. And these friends are called tributaries. They're basically smaller streams and rivers that flow into the main one, adding all their water and making that main river bigger, wider, and a whole lot more powerful. And we can see a perfect example of this right here in Telangana. You've got these 2 massive rivers, the Krishna and the Godavari. So how do they get so huge? Well, it's because countless smaller streams and rivers like the Dindi, the Manjira, and the Musi are all tributaries, constantly pouring their water into them. So now our river is big, it's flowing strong, but it doesn't just passively travel over the land. Oh no, it actively changes it. It carves, it builds, it reshapes. Let's take a look at how this incredible force of water literally sculpts the world around us. Okay, so picture this. The river is reaching the very end of its long journey, where it finally meets the sea. Right at this point, its speed slows way down, and it can't carry all that heavy silt and sand it's been hauling anymore. So what does it do? It just drops it all right there at its mouth. Over time, this pile of deposited sand and silt builds up into a new landform, often shaped like a fan, called a delta. The Krishna and Godavari rivers are famous for creating these huge fertile deltas on India's east coast. You've probably noticed this. The land right next to a river is often super flat, wide, and doesn't have many trees. There's a reason for that. It's called a floodplain. Most of the year, the river minds its own business and stays within its banks. But when you get heavy rains, it overflows and spreads out all over this flat area. That constant flooding is exactly why big trees just can't get a foothold and survive there. And this brings us to the real double-edged sword of a floodplain. On one hand, these floods can be incredibly destructive, right? But on the other hand, they're also a source of new life. After the floodwaters pull back, they leave behind this amazing layer of rich silt. This makes the soil unbelievably fertile, perfect for farming. But that amazing benefit comes with a massive risk. because the floodwaters themselves can wipe out homes, crops, and entire communities.
Yeah, that destructive power is a really serious challenge we have to face. So let's dive a bit deeper into what causes these major floods, including one of nature's most powerful and frightening events, the cyclone.
You know, when it comes to fighting floods, we actually have a powerful natural partner on our side: forests. Think of a forest like a giant sponge. All the trees, the plants, the grass, they slow down the rainwater as it runs off the land. This gives the water much more time to soak into the ground instead of just rushing straight into the nearest river. Let's break that down a little. So first, the vegetation literally gets in the way of the water, slowing it down. Second, the roots of all those plants act like a net, holding the soil together so it doesn't get washed away. That's what we call soil erosion. And third, by slowing the water down, it gives way more of it a chance to percolate or soak deep into the earth. That means less water ends up in the river all at once. But sometimes the rain is just too much, too fast. And that's especially true when it's driven by a cyclone. These things are just massive, rotating storms that build up their power over warm ocean waters, like the Bay of Bengal. When they finally hit land, they unleash these incredible amounts of rain and powerful winds that can completely overwhelm rivers and cause devastating, widespread flooding. Okay, so knowing all these risks is one thing, but knowing how to respond, well, that's what really makes a difference. So, let's finish up by talking about what we can do to prepare for these challenges and keep ourselves, our families, and our communities safe.
Here is some simple but potentially life-saving things you can do. First, pay close attention to weather warnings on the radio or TV. That way you know what's coming. Second, have an emergency kit ready to go. Third, make sure you have enough clean drinking water and food stored safely. Fourth, when the storm hits, stay indoors. And finally, if your home isn't safe or you're told to evacuate, you need to move to a stronger, safer building.
And this is exactly why those government-run early warning systems are so incredibly important. They give people precious time to get ready. And when you combine those official warnings with a community that knows what to do and is prepared to act, you can seriously reduce the impact of these disasters and, most importantly, save lives. So let's just quickly recap that entire amazing journey, shall we? It all starts with rain. That rainwater gathers into tiny streams. Those streams join up with others, becoming tributaries that feed and create massive rivers. And finally, those rivers flow all the way to the sea, shaping our entire world with deltas and plains as they go.
You know, understanding this whole cycle, it's more than just a science lesson, is it? It's about figuring out how to manage our most precious resource, water, and also how to protect ourselves from its incredible power. Which really leaves us with one last big question to think about. Knowing what we know now, how can all of us learn to live in better harmony with water's powerful and essential journey?